We're seeing it become this tool that is democratized for everyone. So no matter your role at NASA, AI is now becoming a part of how you do your day-to-day job.
Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group, Liftoff, how NASA is faring in its exploration of AI. Krista Kinnard joins the Daily Scoop podcast to discuss. It's Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. One quick programming note before we get into the headlines. This will be the last week of Daily Scoop podcast episodes in 2024. After we close things out on Friday, December 20th, we'll be off through the new year, returning to kick off 2025 on January 2nd. We've had an amazing 2024 with you, and we can't wait for what's ahead. Thanks so much for being a part of such a special year. Now let's get into today's top headlines. The Department of Homeland Security has built an artificial intelligence-based chatbot that it's calling DHSChat, the latest in a string of agency experimentations with generative AI. DHSChat is designed as a chatbot meant for internal use within the agency, according to a press release shared Tuesday. The tool was developed by DHS's AI Core and its director, Michael Boyce, after employees experimented with commercial generative AI tools, including Claude and ChatGPT. In a statement, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said that the cutting-edge tool would help workers across DHS draft final reports, summarize critical information, develop new software, streamline administrative tasks, and much more. Mayorkas added that, quote, the department is committed to embracing innovative new technologies like Gen AI in a safe, secure, and responsible way, all while maintaining the highest standards of security and protecting civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy. The tool is similar to other commercial tools, but was made internally and operates in a secure environment, Boyce wrote in a blog post. In response to a FedScoop question, a spokesperson for the agency said that the chatbot leverages external large language models through an API. The spokesperson added that data from DHSChat is not used to train external models. In other news, the Department of Health and Human Services was among the first federal agencies to release its 2024 AI use case inventory on Monday, reporting a roughly 66% increase in uses from the previous year. In a blog post accompanying the inventory, Stephen Posnack, HHS's Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Tech Policy and Principal Deputy National Coordinator for Health IT, highlighted the health agency's increase from 163 to 271 use cases and noted the varying stages of development. The new figure, for example, includes uses for operation and maintenance and in acquisition and development, as well as 16 uses that are retired. The inventory comes as agencies across the federal government are expected to release new and expanded lists of AI use cases for 2024. Agencies were first required to release annual and public AI use case inventories under a Trump-era executive order, but the reporting has been inconsistent and in some cases even incorrect, as documented by Stanford researchers, FedScoop reporting, and a government watchdog review. This year's inventories, which were due Monday, were anticipated to be more expansive than years past, following a memo from the Office of Management and Budget and instructions that added additional information to and clarified the existing process. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, make sure to visit fedscoop.com. As the federal government journeys into uncharted territory with the adoption of AI, it's no surprise that the nation's Space Exploration Agency is one of the most innovative among the bunch. Krista Kinnard is NASA's digital transformation, culture, and communications lead, and she's playing a key role shepherding the cultural push behind the agency's AI revolution. I recently caught up with Kinnard at ACT-IAC's Imagination ELC event in Hershey, Pennsylvania. During our conversation, we touched on her role at the agency and how it relates to AI, the progress the agency has made in adopting AI, and what's ahead. Let's go now to that interview with Krista Kinnard. Krista, thanks so much for joining me at ACT-IAC ELC. You just got done with a panel. Unfortunately, I didn't get to sit in on it, but it was focused on AI. And I'd love to start there with you and talk about AI adoption and what that looks like for you at NASA in your role. But also, if there's any takeaways from that panel that you want to share, feel free to do so as well.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. And the whole ELC experience has been wonderful. This is my first time here. And AI is in a really exciting place at NASA. So first off, NASA's been in the AI game for a long time, right? But what we're seeing now is rather than it being a niche research topic that a PhD is leading a research initiative around, or a group of engineers are building to be able to embed in our mission, we're seeing it become this tool that is democratized for everyone. So no matter your role at NASA, AI is now becoming a part of how you do your day-to-day job. And one of the things that we talked about on the panel, right, is with the executive order and the appointment of our chief AI officer, Dave Salvanini, AI is really at this place where we've been able to elevate all of the different excitement around it. And one of the mantras that we say around AI at NASA is maximize benefit and manage risk. So one of the things that really came up on the panel that I loved that we were able to talk about was how are we able to lean in and bring all of these different use cases from across our 10 different centers at NASA and really bring people together to cross-pollinate and share expertise. And then also, how are we able to bring these communities who are looking at risk and who are thinking about how do we do this responsibly and really give them the stage and the place that they need to say, these are important conversations. Let's bring our brains together and come up with solutions.
Speaking of sort of the benefits side, how has AI, or will it have tangible impacts on the agency's mission and sort of the workforce's ability to innovate and transform?
Yeah, so we're already seeing the benefit of AI. As I've said, NASA's been in the AI business for a long time, but a lot of what we are doing is not only are we seeing it embedded in our mission delivery, but we're also starting to see it in our mission enabling capabilities. So think about our project management, our ability to bring together different data sources, our ability to look at data in ways that we've never been able to before. And we're also starting to look at it in mission support, which I think is probably the least glamorous, but is also this really important part of how we evaluate the work that we're doing, how we look at all of these different documents, right, that describe what our partners are doing, how we're going to bring work into NASA. So it's really having an impact, and I think we're already seeing measurable impact, right? Whether it's being able to more quickly and efficiently digest and make insights around imagery coming from the lunar surface, or looking at data around global ice caps, right? And being able to consume that in a way to say, look, you can actually see what's happening over time, right? Because these huge data sources that we previously weren't able to look at in a rapid way, we now have these tools that make it fast, efficient, effective for us to understand and drive decision making.
So what are some of the bigger priorities in this AI space going forward for you and your role and at NASA writ large? So
NASA's number one priority is, of course, implementing AI effectively and responsibly, right? And so when the executive order came out saying, we want to be managing risk, we want to be establishing governance, NASA was already putting that in place, right? NASA has a long and robust history of evaluating our technology to ensure that it is mission safe and mission ready. We have a long history of being able to say, NASA is a world leader in systems engineering. So being able to bring in new technologies, new capabilities around artificial intelligence and saying, all right, we need to have governance, we need to make sure we're evaluating this, and we just want to make that as seamless as possible through our existing systems. So those have been big focuses for us. And then, of course, educating our workforce has been a huge part of what we've been focusing on. We've been in our transition from AI for niche application and expertise to AI for everyone means we want everyone who's going to be used it to be skilled, to be able to analyze the output of an AI system and say, this is good, I can use it, or maybe I need to do some tweaking here.
Sure, that totally makes sense. You talked about balancing the benefit and the risk. Risk to me is, the biggest challenge with AI, sort of managing that risk, but also are there other challenges that you see, or do you want to talk more about that risk side of it?
So risk is absolutely important. I feel like we could have an entire segment on how do you manage AI risk. Of course, we are leaning into things like the NIST AI risk management framework. And again, NASA has a robust history in how we manage risk. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is our risk posture around AI. So being able to establish that, but also see how that may change. But really one of the big challenges I think that we haven't yet talked about is, of course, infrastructure and security, right? Being able to build out AI tools in a way that the agency can access them, the agency can cross-pollinate in such a way that we're still protecting our data in the way that it needs to be protected can certainly be a challenge, not only from bringing the data together, identifying where it is, encrypting it in the way that it needs to be encrypted, but also building out those infrastructure components so that we can support AI at scale.
You've kind of mentioned a handful of them, but are there other disciplines? You've talked about data just now, the workforce, security. Are there other parts of the IT stack, if you will, that are sort of integral to AI really advancing the way it needs to at NASA that you're focused on?
So one of the conversations that we've had, and I think that this is absolutely true, is where do we put AI in our organization? Because really every component of NASA will be touched by AI, right? So when we talk about applications that we're building, when we talk about autonomous systems, when we talk about hardware, right? All of these will have some kind of touch to AI as we look forward. And so really being able to have this broad scope approach to saying, all right, we got to think about security, we got to think about infrastructure, we got to think about high-end computing, we got to think about where do we want to put this, right? Are we putting it in data centers? Are we putting it in the cloud? How are we going to do it on the edge, right? If we want to have AI systems deployed in orbit, in space, on the lunar surface, on Mars, right? What is that going to look like? And what are the systems that we need to be building and establishing now to make that happen? And then, of course, the governance that goes along with it.
So as we close out, we've talked a lot about AI, and obviously that feeds into NASA's larger digital transformation journey. How would you characterize NASA's progress on that digital transformation journey? And with that, what are sort of the priorities that lie ahead?
Yeah, so I think, I've been at NASA for a year, and even in just 1 year at NASA, right, I feel like I've seen so much transformation. So we are well underway on our transformation journey, but we still have so much more to go, right? And it's just so exciting. And one of the things that I truly love about NASA is our culture of let's do hard things, right? And so I think that we really have embraced a lot of these technologies. And when we have folks like our Chief AI Officer, even like our administrator and deputy administrator saying AI is a part of NASA's future, right? It's just met with so much excitement. And we know that there's these transformative elements to our culture, to our infrastructure, to the way that we work. But there's really a lot of excitement around it. And that's really what inspires me, right? Is the excitement, is the engagement, and really the thoughtfulness that our NASA community brings to the table to say, let's do this, but let's really think about how to do it well.
And then just a quick follow-up to close, as a deputy administrator, CAIO, CIO, whoever it is, kind of makes those bold statements to let's innovate and move forward. How is it then, what is your role in that as the sort of head of digital transformation, communication, and culture to kind of champion in that and make sure that the workforce is behind it?
My job is really to engage with people, right? So our leadership has this ability to send top-down messages, right? But there's also this cultivation of the human spirit that I really like to lean into and say, all right, well, what's your job? What do you do? How are you thinking about how this technology is going to impact you when you wake up in the morning and sign on to your computer, right? Because when the administrator says something, right, for it to trickle all the way down to everyone who works at NASA, every engineer, every scientist, every intern, every project manager, every contractor, right? That's really the space that I live in, right? Is that translation from high on directive to how do we make this happen every day for you, and how do we make it meaningful?
That makes total sense. You can't do it without the buy-in of the workforce, and it seems like that's the critical function in your role. So that's very important. Krista, great time speaking with you. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk with y'all.
For more on AI at NASA, make sure to visit fedscoop.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.